Yes, hello. Is this Netflix? Yes, hello. This is Dr. Volcano here. No, Doctor. Dr. Volcano. Yes, I'd like to make a film. I'd like for it to be an anthology of horror, poetry, and ghost stories, with themes of violence and depravity and suffering and depression and whatnot. It'll be a comedy. Yes, a comedy. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh. Well, that's too bad. I thought you made movies. Oh. Well, I can tell you, friend, you're missing out. Funding? No, zero. Zero funding. Production? No. Very little production. No. I have the title. Yes, I do. I have the title. Would you like to hear the title? Oh, okay. Well, fantastic. The film will be called Dr. Volcano's Cabinet of Carnage. I send the nightmares slowly creeping into your mind when I know you're sleeping, and the fear becomes a weapon when the effects kick in. The sweat of stress sickening, mixing with blood from where the blade sticks in, or out, I suppose. I'm outside your window, my blade glinting in the moonlight. I'm still outside your window waiting till the time is just right. I'm right outside your window. It's my simplest plan yet. I'll just wait outside your window until you go to bed. Now I'm climbing through your window. I'm going to stab you in the chest. Once I climb through your window, this knife is going in your ribs. I'm almost through your window, and I can't wait for this. The other side of the window, and the knife is going in. You're not sleeping soundly, rather loudly when I find you tossing and turning as the nightmares remind you of my face backlit by the moon. You kick the blankets off, but I'm still on top of you. The sheets are soaked and reek. You're whimpering while you sleep. It's time to stab you in the heart and just end this misery. As the blade goes in, there's very little resistance. Underneath the skin, the blade slid effortless. In between the ribs, the perfect incision. It's the start of the way to the heart to finish him. His eyes opened as I stabbed him. But I didn't really care. His eyes opened as I stabbed him just to see me standing there. His eyes opened when I stabbed him and I ended his life. His eyes opened when I stabbed him for the last and final time. Now I'm escaping out the window. Off out into the night. I'm escaping out the window, out of mind, out of sight. I'm escaping out the window. Now it's time to disappear. I'm escaping out the window. Like I was never even here. The mechanics turn and the gears grind alive. The melody is birthed into a somber mind, climbing to find new depths of sadness by rising out of the ashes of madness, pulled back by the whispers in the darkness. and all the comforts of the rut where you started. The music calls you to the next plateau, and only the fear knows how high you'll go. You teeter on a platform you pretend is your own. Up, down, pfft. Who knows where's really your home? How high can you climb? Where do you belong, and how long can you listen to this lyricless song, and how long can you dismiss this whisper in the darkness as your fists ball up and your heart hardens, this misty-eyed reflection, this weed in the garden, these vicious incriminations for which there is no pardon from the pinnacle of mania? You can hear the tune the clearest, but when you look down on the meat grinder, it no longer feels like music. This twisted symphony and broken halo memories beckon with siren song and menacing melody until all hope has bled out. Until you bid the blackness thanks, and from the crest of your insanity, you look down and see there's no one turning the crank. We are the Harbingers of Horror, and the purveyors of the putrid, the facilitators of fear. You asked us, we do it. We deliver the demons, we bring the brutality, we leave you screaming while we steal your humanity. And this vicious visit takes you places that you don't ever want to go. Inside the mind of a lunatic, you'll find a fear you've never known, and you'll know there's only one way out. That's just how this story goes. Around here, there's no escaping, there's no hiding, there's no hope. I want you to understand, and I want you to believe that even if you leave Haunt Manor never leaves. When they discovered you were gone, no one really cared that much. They barely moved beyond thoughts and prayers and such. It's like it didn't even matter once I wiped the blood spatter. You were out of sight, out of mind, out of touch. Your body will never be found. We'll hide you in my walls. We're used to the smell now. And sometimes I'll wear your skin, like a fancy new suit. I'll go hang out with your friends. They'll probably like me more than you. He types on a typewriter frantically. Click, 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 hunched, bent in half, circling the drain of completion, an opus. The room is lit by only candlelight, and the shadows dance as shadows do, but these shadows have claws and teeth, and they whisper maniacal metaphors. Click, 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 return, ding. That kind of typewriter, that click, 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 return, ding. Click, 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 you get it. You get the idea. The keys have been replaced. The ribbon is irregular, the ink is red. The letters are unmarked now, but his fingers find the keys with a familiarity. The molars that now stand in 3 rows aren't all from one mouth. That's too many molars. 26 letters in the alphabet, 12 molars in the human mouth. Plus return, spacebar, punctuation, minimum 4 adult mouths. Stripped of teeth, minimum. Click, 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 return, ding. The hunched man types maniacal, frantic meanderings of shadows screaming an opus at the night. Click, 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 return, ding. I think I always find nostalgia when I'm looking for other things. Shoveling remnants and artifacts from a time that used to be into a hole that's been gaping for as long as I remember, that never seems to fill up and never gets any better, and these drips let me pretend that everything is happy in the world again. It's therapy through nostalgic means, trying to find the missing things, and even if I never find them, these symbols will always remind me. It's Spider-Man and Venom I keep throwing down the hole. It's first print, first appearances that help keep me afloat. The art from a time when nothing was okay. The songs and the toys and the stories of a rotten yesterday. Not forgotten pain that I can't escape and carry with me every single day. Therapy through nostalgic means, trying to find the missing things, and even if I never find them, the symbols will always remind me. The colorful characters aren't as bright as they used to be. The anti-heroes are the ones that dominate the screen, the questionable, the room for error, the anxious joys, the hopeful terror, the shades of gray. The in-between, the darkness and the light that live inside of me. Therapy through nostalgic means, trying to find the missing things, and even if I never find them, these symbols will always remind me. When you make this association, the symbols get distorted into ugly gargoyles, bent and contorted, and the more symbols you've thrown into the hole, the harder it becomes to recognize them all, and then the shadows reach for you from somewhere deep inside your soul, and you cave to them because they have faces that you know, and you follow them fearlessly back into the hole. Therapy through nostalgic means, trying to find the missing things, and even if I never find them, these symbols will remind me. And now, a special presentation of the Quarantines! Wasn't that a hoot and a holler? Oh, my! Elisa Lam Alone, Elisa Lam Alone. Oh, through the tubes you'll go, Elisa Lam Alone. Falling apart. We saw the elevator footage staggering. Life gave you no footing, and down into the dark you dove, and down into the dark you stayed, and down into the dark you began to melt away. Elisa Lam Alone, Elisa Lam Alone. Oh, through the tubes you'll go, Elisa Lam Alone. Mommy, she hears and looks down at her daughter. Her skin is red and blotchy. Something's wrong with the water. It leaves a film on me. Even if I leave it running, it's a strange type of gray, and it tastes and smells funny. Elisa Lam Alone, Elisa Lam Alone. Oh, through the tubes you'll go, Elisa Lam Alone. Elisa Lam took her life at the witching hour. She dove down into the darkness of the hotel water tower, and as her skin flayed from decay and waves, hotel patrons drank and bathed in Elisa Lam Alone's remains. Elisa Lam Alone, Elisa Lam Alone. Oh, through the tubes you'll go, Elisa Lam Alone. The day the haunted house collapsed, the entire cast died in their masks. The entire cast died in their masks the day the haunted house collapsed. It was strange the way they died. They were all crushed alive. They were all crushed alive. It was strange the way they died. Even stranger how one clown survived. Dangerous and deranged, dangerous and deranged. Even stranger how one clown survived. When the day the haunted house collapsed, the entire cast died in their masks. Even stranger how one clown survived. 32 actors dead, 32 lives up in smoke. He always went a little far with his practical jokes. Hey, Paul, it's Dr. Volcano.
Yeah, hey, Doc, it's Paul. Listen, I got a copy of the new movie, and I just gotta ask, do you know why Jason's movies are so successful?
What do you mean?
If he's out there killing potheads and slutty teenagers, you're out here doing poetry about depression and corn monsters. Now, I don't even know what to say. You know, Violet Brown told me to shove this movie up my ass. Do you know what it feels like to be told to have a movie shoved up your ass? Look, either change the movie or it's not coming out.
Whatever, man. I'm gonna take a break from all this terror, but while I'm gone, I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of James Owen Brown, a.k.a. Wilson Frisky, a.k.a. the Kingpin, a.k.a. the P.O.E.
You hike to clear your mind. Nothing crazy. A local trail that goes around the top of a rock face that drops about 40 feet. You've been here before. Your pace is reasonable. The breeze is in your face. Your spring jacket is barely enough. It takes you 15 minutes or so to make the trek up. You examine your existence on the way. You conclude that you're not completely fulfilled, but it could certainly be worse. At the pinnacle, you find acceptance. You rest and admire the view. Arms akimbo, you breathe deeply and try to inhale all the beauty your wandering eyes can see. Just then, you're startled out of your daydream by a gravelly voice gargling what your ears perceive and believe to be a cross between a plea for help and someone screaming, "Hey," like, "Ah!" And from the bright sky, your eyes need time to adjust to the light in the lush greens and mud forest floor. Your head whips left and scans. Your eyes land on the shape that's making the noise. 50 feet away, it's human-shaped, but barely. Its limbs are mangled. It gets bigger as your brain registers. It's coming towards you. It's coming for you. Ah! You turn to run. You slip in mud. Stunned, you briefly spin your wheels, but you make it up. Looking back again, you're terrified as you begin to understand the monster after you is on a mission. You run fast, straight ahead, continually tracked, and as you look back at that, you see that creature has your jacket. Not literally yours, but one that exactly matches. It's covered in blood. Nothing about this is good, but somehow you feel sorry for a monstrosity you never thought you would. You're terrified. Your heart hasn't pounded so hard in your life. You're sprinting so fast. Your legs are on fire. You normally know the area well, but now you're lost and you're tired. You glance back and something else is familiar. You and this thing are dressed very similar, taken aback by the fact that your jacket and hat are perfectly matched to your boots and your slacks. What is going on? You mumble, moving forward, but without ever looking forward. Your gaze is now trained on the monster coming toward you because its face is your face and your brain cannot explain why you and the creature coming for you look the same, except its mangled limbs are tangled like it survived some kind of attack. It's barely alive, bleeding, open wounds, compound fractures, still running, still not looking forward. You sprint directly off the side of the rock cliff where you finally accepted your existence for what it is. You breathe deeply as you fall. You close your eyes, and you shatter on the rocks below. When your eyes open, your feathered vision shows you what's left of your body. Your survival instincts kick in. Your adrenaline kicks in. Your swiveling head scans every direction for help. You look up, see yourself, finally accepting your existence. There's no one else who could possibly help you, and you, but you can't hear you, so you waddle your way to the sloping part of the trail, hoping your arms and your legs don't fail to carry you up to a place where help is available, while your own bones are trying to impale you. Maintain a pain that makes the pace okay to take, and you all the way to the top of the mountain, and you see you, hear you, recognize you, coming toward you, coming for you, with vicious persistence, and you chase you right off the side of the cliff where you accepted a perpetual set of complex consequences, demented enough to torment your existence. And that's where you stayed for the rest of your days, reliving the same craziness the same way, over and over and over again, just a victim, caught in the tides of your own fate. She said, "Never go down to the basement. Fear will follow a foolish little boy to a putrid permanent placement." I never understood what that place meant. I just wanted to pet the puppy. He was whimpering a lonely song out into an abandoned existence, and I could be a perfect playmate. Why would my mother deny me this dog? And why cordon him to the darkness of the basement? These questions birthed curt replies, but never any answers. I just wanted to pet the puppy. Amidst the daily dance of errands and a boring hustle-bustle, I found the downstairs door left open. I was about to meet my new best friend. Never go down to the basement. Her voice was a Jiminy Cricket conscience. Never go down to the basement. I am all of 8 years old, bold and brave and brash. I am a superhero, and I want to pet the puppy. I pull the door towards me. No resistance. The way is clear. I test the first step down like bath water, and I remain ice cold through the threshold of the doorway. The stairs stretch infinite in the black, but whimpers were my torch. I tiptoed dainty and soft as I could be, each step bending the rules further. I just wanted to pet the puppy, but I didn't see a puppy. My mind, doing its frenzied best to register what my eyes were seeing, was startled loose by a frantic hand on my shoulder. She was furious. "I told you, never go down to the basement." She was so angry, and I was so scared. I was still trembling when she returned to the room with lunch and hugs. This made me feel better. I felt so much better that I forgot to ask her about the little boy in the basement, with no hands or feet, making noises like a puppy. They were standing over me, their pincers examining my body hair, too scared to scream, believe that I was dreaming until I didn't. And I wasn't. They locked me in my room and chained me to my bed, brought me burgers every 6 hours to make sure that I was fed. When my stomach started acting up, they gave me fruit instead. I thought they wanted to eat me, but they didn't want me dead. A burglar tried to enter. They decapitated him to protect me, to make sure I was safe. At least that's what I believed until the day that I felt sick and bloated and flush and it wouldn't go away. When I saw my skin literally crawling, I realized what they did. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting their kids. She was 5 when she started the fire. Layered newspaper clippings kindling in 3 thin logs built into a teepee arranged expertly by a 5-year-old girl. He was 95 when he wandered away from the home, became disoriented, and never found his way back. Senility brought him into the woods and refused to lead him out. She lit one match and let it catch one scrap of newspaper, which ignited the one beside it, domino effect with the kindling next and the teepee of logs on the horizon. His moments of lucidity were fleeting and terrifying. When he opened his eyes and didn't recognize his surroundings, and his panic was drowning in manic behavior, compounding the fact that he's weak and he'll probably fall down in the cold and there's no one around. She was 5 when she started the fire. Her mother asked her why she would start a fire inside, and she cried, and she said Grandpa said I needed to know how, but her grandpa had died 3 years before she was ever alive. When he was 95, he got lost in the woods, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stay lucid long enough to gather supplies like kindling and logs and newspaper clipping, and drifting somewhere in the fog is crippling when time is a factor, and it's either act now or freeze to death in the woods. She was 5 when she started the fire, but no one taught her how. A town not too far north to have a debit machine, but north enough for it to be very slow, has gossip. After any and every incident, hearsay pervades like headlines, and hyperbole becomes the storyteller's most useful tool to hold the attention of an audience that shouldn't care less. It was just down the street the story starts. It was just down the street they let him die. He thrashed in the water for 40 minutes and then the splashing stops. They found weights tied to the body. They're murderers. The reality was it took just 3 minutes and 10 seconds for the Sutton Boy to drown. He didn't need the help of weights. He couldn't swim, and neither could the Suttons. They watched their boy die. Years later, the Suttons are still shunned and treated like murderers, made pariah by wives' tales designed to poison the boredom of a town so far north that the debit machine is very slow. There's a shadow that hangs over the Sutton house, but not one of malice. It's a whirling sadness swirling above the Sutton house. They say that since the accident, if you swim too close to the Sutton house, you can feel the boy's gentle tugs at your toes as you float. But that's just a tale told by chatty adults. Before the incident, countless careless kids had fallen in and been victim to an undertow that spun like the stories in this town. And since, no incidents, no accidents, just careful kids. And maybe it's because parents won't let their kids swim near where murderers live, or maybe this lake has a guardian angel, just for kids. Maybe, though they never found the body, he never floated so far that he could escape the lamenting of his grieving parents. He stayed with them. And every gentle tug on the toe of a tattletale is a reminder that it's none of their business what happened that day on that lake in a town just far enough north that the debit machine is very slow. When my sister and I were young, our childhood home had a ghost. Not one that we ever saw. She watched over us. We knew the presence was a she because she watched over us. We would wake up and find teacups beside our beds. She didn't want us to sleep without tea. She would slide the old rocking chair that had been in the house longer than we'd been there, inch by inch towards the center of the room, so she could be close to us while we watched cartoons. And we would always feel guilty sliding it back because we know she just wanted to be close. We always stayed close. Once my sister and I were grown, we did some digging into our childhood home and found a newspaper clipping. Turns out the woman who lived there was widowed when her husband leapt from the window after he discovered his wife had poisoned the tea that she gave to the children. With her family now gone and no will to live on, she hung herself by a noose from the rafters, kicked out the old rocking chair she used to balance there, snapping her neck, and her happily ever after. The woods sleep still at night. Seemingly silent, but just below the surface ripples a marathon of secret life. You can't always see it, but it's there. Only heightened senses survive slumbering forest nights. This is where serial killers sleep with one eye open, and things that go bump in city nights wouldn't dare. As quick evenings give in to long night times, take refuge. Be safe and snuggle tight because the dark is reborn stronger here every time the moon chases away the sun. And we shoulder the burden because the long arm of the law and even the fingertips of God can't tickle deep into this woods. And it's a cold one tonight. Somewhere out there is a monster. Somewhere in these woods, in the overgrown tangles and the blackness of the blanket draped over the day, it's waiting with blood drying around its muzzle. It's waiting with fresh ripped flesh rotting beneath its claws, and a hunger not just in its belly but in its eyes and in its soul. And it's waiting to swallow you whole. 300 years ago, a werewolf woman, goes into the woods at the witching hour with hopes of finding a remedy. She paints a blood pentagram on a carpet of mud and dead leaves. Surrounded by the tools of black magic, she strips and begins to chant. Finally, at peace enough to feel the infancy of an internal cleansing, she catches eyes with the full moon and begins the change. It's too late. Change for her is second nature, but it's agony every time. Directly down to all fours, she howls as claws push through fingertips, fangs cut gums, and feral instinct sucker punches rational thought. Bones grind and tendons stretch as knees and thighs become haunches and feet morph to paws. Howling silenced briefly as jaw dislocates to birth snout. That's the worst part. That and the hair. My God, the hair. Transformation complete. The winds rustle perfect fur as she stands majestic in a pentagram painted in blood. Her howling attracts others. Hungry, they surround her, but food is not on their minds. The night lights up in a symphony of howling, one by one. After they have their fill of her, she has their fill of them, and hacksaw savage, she eats their throats. Finished, she feels peaceful, surrounded by 5 warm bodies, one of which still twitching from having yet to bleed out, and as the blood pools, the forest floor is blood mud puddles, and the pentagram is now indiscernible. Satisfied, she sleeps. She wakes up human, naked, filthy, and pregnant. The change won't come again. She grows ridiculous, and at 3.5 months dies, not so much giving birth, but more from being eaten alive from the inside. Her son, her baby boy, is loose. Mercifully, she died in bed. The baby chewed through its own umbilicus, smashed through a second-story window, and landed with a thud in the front yard. Our world obviously had no acceptance for him. 7 feet tall, bipedal. This was a wolf too carnal to ever fathom a sheep's disguise. This was not half man, half wolf. This was not a werewolf. This was a rare wolf, 75% animal, 25% man, 100% monster. And it's waiting in the woods with blood drying around its muzzle, and fresh, ripped flesh rotting beneath its claws, with a hunger, not just in its belly, but in its eyes, and in its soul.
And now, a classic!
Seesaw and saucy. The saucy things this saw has seen, and I make the saw sing the stories of blood and rust and whimsy. I mend the beautiful bones by bending soothing tones into an ether earmarked for scary stories in the dark. Seesaw and saucy. The saucy things this saw has seen, and I make the saw sing the blood of trees and logs and dust and bone and the sweat of men long dead, with work ethic forged in steel, but bodies made of flesh. Over a century of stories and a lifetime of unrest. Now sing, saw. Sing your songs of death. The wicked warbling whimpers of wailing steel writhe. In the wretched blackness of the night's mind, it cries. For every life, it's cut, masticating timber and trunk, and bone, and spine sever, never whole forever, it's cut. Blood trickle, drip, drop, dribble, droplets spill, and polished steel, bent in singing. Accidental lament, you weren't meant for singing, but my God, you were born for it. You were built to cut and wreck. Instead, you sing shrill songs of death. And these apologies, delivered 100 years too late, are stained by the fact that we used you as a tool. So seesaw and saucy. The saucy things this saw has seen, and I make the saw sing the grim and ghastly, horrifying and haunting, beautifully bizarre and dangerously daunting songs of what this saw has seen.
Yes, hello, is this Disney Plus? Yes, hello, is this HBO Max? Dr. Volcano here. Tubi? Yes, hello, is this Shudder? Dr. Volcano here. Dr. Volcano here. Dr. Volcano here. Dr. Volcano here. Yes, hello, is this Crackle? There's a whole new set of noises radiating through this room, different creaks and cranks that I'm not used to. There's a ticking on the left and there's a humming on the right. The toilet seems to run for hours and the furnace clangs all night. After constant contemplation of the sounds that I found here, it's now clear that silence is in fact something you can hear. And when the noises go, and it's just you, and your voice alone carries you through until the noises you know come back. And once again, the quarantines. got a hoot and a holler. Oh, my. I just saw my reflection blink while looking in the mirror. I just saw my reflection blink. It couldn't have been clearer. I just saw my reflection blink. His eyes were closed and mine were open. 7 years bad luck. My mirror image is broken. I just saw my reflection blink. Now I'm not sure what to think. My sanity's straight on the brink. The dimensions are collapsing. I just saw my reflection blink. And I don't know what that means. Like the universe and the things I know aren't exactly as they seem because I just saw my reflection blink. And what can I do about it but stand here stupid staring at my own self, dumbfounded? Because I just saw my reflection blink. And what do I do now? When I'm looking at myself smiling, but I'm sure I'm wearing a frown. Look at all those creatures, they're excited to meet you. Look at all those creatures, they're just dying to eat you. Look at all those creatures, they won't let you go home, leave you alone, or let you use your cell phone. Look at all those creatures and the way that they stare. Look at all those creatures and the way that they don't care. Look at all those creatures just off the leash and they won't leave or cease until they're sure you're deceased. Just look at all those creatures, they're on the loose. Look at all those creatures ready to show you abuse. Look at all those creatures. How will you survive? If you don't say your prayers, you won't escape alive. Look at all those creatures. 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 Crazy Farmer Phil was growing weird corn from strange seeds. He was using voodoo fertilizer he acquired in New Orleans. One night late in the fall, an odd event occurred. A young girl was crucified on the scarecrow cross they used to scare away the birds. Some bullies left her hanging, unconscious and bleeding deep into the voodoo soil, seeping inside the creepy corn that Farmer Phil was reaping. In and out of consciousness, she prayed someone would find her. She could hear what sounded like old rope stretching from behind her, and then a primal growl that could rattle the bowel, and 7 feet of what looked like corn ran by her. When her eyelids flickered open, lucidly showed her violence, bullies screaming, blood and corn and body parts impaled by sharpened cobs, and then silence. The corn creature disappeared in the distance after setting her free. She called out, "Wait!" and then fell to her knees immediately. She examined the scattered mess and what was left of her tormentors as a man in a car pulls over and trudges the corn maze. A knight in shining armor. He sees the horror scene. He puts a blanket on her. She's shaking, but at least she'll be warmer. He says, "It's an awful scene here, ma'am. What exactly went on?" And she looks directly through him and says, "It wasn't me. It was the corn." Hey there, you. Yeah, you. You're maybe on the toilet. You're on the couch. Maybe you're on your phone on the bus. Maybe you're really freaking out the fool sitting next to you. I was just checking to see if you're still with me. Still got all your body parts? Still got clean underpants? Now may be a good time to change your underpants. Everybody knows. Once upon a time there were 3 bears, each more violent than the next, and they were on the hunt for you, because you were sleeping in their beds. They're going to maul you. and eat the battered remains of the degenerate who invaded their home and desecrated their space, the nosy little child that got carried away, snooping into places that they had no business being, and when the bears caught you sleeping in their bed that day, vigilante justice dictates that you seal your own fate, and now the hunt is on, and they've got you in their sights. You're all alone, and they're hidden by the night. It's time to strike me first. The bears bellow at the same time, and the wise old bear takes it upon himself to decide. We attack at the same time. Yeah, that sounds just right. And one more time, let's get the poetically organized entity in on the mayhem.
I used to play in my backyard, but one day wandered far away and found a farm. I was greeted by a nice old lady. "Pleased to meet you," I said, shaking. See, I was a trespasser in a stranger's garden. She was friendly, and by the end she let me taste her garden herbs. "El Fresco," she said. "Young man, it's time to get home." She pointed me towards my destination, and without hesitation home I went without discussion, and I ate and I slept and I dreamt of a friendly lady whose husband died in the war. I shrugged it off and started my day again by wandering away, retracing my steps from yesterday's forest maze towards a garden lost in the tangles of these woods. Instinct led the way. Internal GPS steers me correctly, the best way to arrive in minimal time at my secret sanctuary. She greets me again, pleased to see me again. She's friendly and shares her garden treasures with me again. I shared with her my 11-year-old stories, the only treasures I possessed then. I told my stories until I went through the rotation, and then I just started at the beginning again. I wasted words while I tasted herbs and faced an urge to never leave this garden and eating al fresco. She said, "Let's go, young man, it's time to get home." She pointed me towards my destination, and without hesitation home I went without discussion, and I ate and I slept and I dreamt of a friendly lady whose husband tended an herb garden and died in the war. I shrugged it off again and started my day again, the same way again, but stopped by Mom in the yard. I had to explain where I'd been all day yesterday. I met a lady in a garden full of tasty herbs not far from here, just over there beyond the tangles. No one lives out there, my mother told me boldly. She confessed we'd been neighborless here for 200 years. "I'll take you there." And I took her there, to where there used to be a garden and a friendly lady who fed me tasty herbs while I wasted words. "Al fresco." "Let's go," my mother said. "Young man, it's time to get home." Decimated, I procrastinated and fought my destination. It was here. I was there. We had discussions. I walked home through the tangles with feathered vision from tears of confusion. I ate and I slept and I dreamt of a friendly lady who died of a broken heart tending the herb garden her husband left behind when he died in the war. 200 years before I ever wandered into that garden and wasted words and tasted herbs, al fresco in the forest tangles. Weeping for you now. The Spirit Canyon floods with tears, but they won't wash those ancient etchings. The inspiration for your ending, you were not the first. This place was haunted long before you came, found solace, and died. Prophetic pictures, what looks like suicide from cliff ledges could be headstands too crudely drawn to decipher, but you saw what you wanted. And when the haunted image spoke, you listened. You answered. You asked where you belonged because you didn't feel like you belonged anywhere but Spirit Canyon. You are home, they whispered in the wind's voice. You, child of white, child of red, daughter of neither, found home in hieroglyphic and disembodied voices. In life, you made yourself scarce enough that becoming a ghost was easy and far less painful, and now you've become the voice of Spirit Canyon. luring the lost towards the ledge and letting them see what they want in Rorschach etchings in hopes of finding a replacement, to wail in the wind's voice beyond the decorated walls of Spirit Canyon. If you look hard enough, you might be able to see the future through that telescope, he told me. I was young, but I still didn't really believe. As I pressed my left eye to the eyepiece, the blackness of a universe unfolded. I saw the stars, I saw lights I couldn't identify, the moon closer than ever before in the vastness of a world my young mind could never comprehend. I swiveled the neck down so I could get a closer look at my town. I could better grasp my own town. The brick and concrete was concrete in my brain. I saw my street, the street over, my school. I saw my neighbors, my favorite park, and where my dad takes me for lunch after skating on the weekend. I saw the old church. The old church was a perfect old church, complete with gargoyles. I turned the focus knob and an angry face blurred into a frightening clarity I'd never seen. Gargoyle fangs and horns seemed far sharper and far more menacing in the dark, and the coming storm didn't make the atmosphere any less frightening. Lightning rips the sky, and in a flash, something catches my eye. There's a man on the rooftop, and he looks like he's watching me, but not just watching me, he's studying me. Were we making eye contact? Could he even see me this far away? He was stone still and wearing a cloak-type jacket with full hood. He smiled a twisted smile that was foreign and familiar in the same glance, and he waved like he knew I would be there. And then the rain came. Years later, I would still from time to time see that foreign, familiar face in dreams, in passing reflections, and in my darkest thoughts. It wasn't a haunting in that I was afraid, but more of an awareness that my brain wouldn't let me forget. I helped out at the church every now and again. Its age and size were no longer instruments of unease, but sanctuary. The gargoyles and I never became friends, but we got on well enough. The church had become a bit of a second home. I took pride in greeting the ladies at the door, helping them up the front steps, and occasional light maintenance around the building. Tonight was threatening to storm, and one of the big spotlights that shone from the roof to light up the parking lot had blown. Easy enough to fix in the sunlight, but in the dark and with a looming storm, not so much. I volunteered. Before I headed up the rickety failing stairs to the roof, the pastor said, "Grab a jacket from the cloakroom." As if to emphasize the point, an authoritative thunder clapped and then rolled the outside black. I grabbed a jacket and pulled it on. As I climbed the stairs, I threw up the oversized hood just before wiggling the rusted bolt lock free. When I pushed the slightest on the door, the vicious night wind caught it and slammed it wide open, banging against the wall behind. I paused and took a breath in anticipation of my wet, cold future. I stepped out as more thunder applauded my good deed. I quickly unscrewed and swapped out the light bulbs, good as new. More thunder as I headed away from the edge and back towards the door. I looked out over the city, admiring the view from the old church's roof. I looked towards the part of the town where I used to live. I bet I can see the apartment I grew up in from here. And for no reason at all, just as a strike of lightning blew up the sky, I waved in the direction of a telescope that apparently could see the future. She didn't sing often, and never while I was in the room, but her voice was an angel cloud billow pillow perfect, and through the subtle static of the baby monitor it had a classic phonograph quality that turned a baby-proof suburban living room into a smoky jazz club from 1920s Manhattan. Go to sleep, little angel, lay down your sweet head. Rest now, my darling, in your comfy bed. Morning comes early, the night won't last too long. The world's topsy-turvy and soon you will be gone. Her songs were eerie but soulful, Typically not words that would describe my wife, but who am I to criticize how she sings her child to sleep? I reclined in my chair and just listened, even turned the volume right up, and I was almost drifting off to sleep when my wife came through the front door. Neither of us have slept since. Who's driving when I'm not there? I never go to sleep, but I keep waking up. Sometimes places I go, sometimes places I don't. Who's driving when I'm not there? Who's behind my eyes when I get that vacant stare? Whenever I come to, and I'm back to being me, I'm left with only questions and zero memory. Maybe I'm narcoleptic. Maybe I'm possessed. Maybe I should get checked. Maybe I'm obsessed. It's always reassuring to wake up in my home, but less so when I wake up to unfamiliar poems. It's more than a little disturbing to rise and shine to find writing written by my hand, but not by my mind. He just wanted them to laugh. Always a storyteller, Chuck was the funniest kid at theater camp. He lived his jokes, and his jokes were his truth. Chuck was heavy, and to compensate for a lack of female attention, he used the best tool at his disposal: comedy. He always left the ladies in stitches, but never scored any kisses. Comedy just wasn't enough. When Kevin saw Kelly touch Chuck's arm and throw her head back like slow-motion laughter, something inside him simply snapped like dry spaghetti. Kevin was all drama, not a comedic bone in his frame, and no timing. The girls gave him the attention, and the boys made him a pariah, spread lies about him, and embarrassed him so much that even the girls began to avoid him. When he asked why, they dodged and deflected the question like pinball flippers, and he knew they were only sparing his feelings. He didn't even bother calling them out. Who'd want to be friends with a pathetic clown like me? At that moment, something inside him simply snapped like dry spaghetti, and he cackled the night awake. If they think I'm a clown, I'll make them right. He dressed different. After that, he acted different. After that, he was different. After that, introverted and random, creepy. The other boys didn't like the new way he was, specifically with the women that used to be his friends. After a monologue memorizing session, the boys decided to teach Chuck a lesson. They took him back by the railroad tracks and beat him. They mercilessly beat his body unrecognizable and left him for dead. When they were 50 yards away, they heard a sound that was somewhere in between a cackle and a chuckle. They justified it in their minds that it must have come from somewhere else, but deep down, they knew where it came from. No one ever saw Chuck again. No body, dead or alive, was ever found. The old stage and sets have long since been torn down and replaced by cabins and a campground, but they say if you stay close enough to the railway, you can still hear the sound of Chuckles the clown trying to laugh his pain away.
Watch the sheep, they said. It'll be fun, they said. You have to learn responsibility, they said. And in their eyes I saw a sick delight as they condemned me to a boredom that made watching paint dry seem like playing PlayStation 4 while someone tickled at my undercarriage. Watching the sheep was so boring that watching the sheep became the new cliched stale phrase used to describe a scenario that transcends boredom. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. I'm really watching the sheep over here. This was not vanilla. This was chickpea. Standing in this field, the sheep are fine. They're doing sheep things, and I'm standing in this field like an a-hole. There's a fence. Nothing's coming in. Nothing's getting out. Nothing's happening. This is some twisted rite of passage. All the old men stood in their fathers' fields, and now the sons keep the cycle spinning. I should teach them a lesson. I should make them pay for this and send a message loud enough to bust the ghosts of the past. I'll yell, "Wolf!" and they'll all come. I swear they care more about the rest of the sheep than they do about me. This is going to be fun. Wolf, wolf, wolf! All the men came bounding over the hill and down into the field, over the fence. Where's the wolf? Priceless panic, horrified humor. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. I laugh and I explain that the joke is on them and they don't get it. They scold me. This is not a joke. Protect the sheep. The sheep are fine. They're doing sheep things. Never disrupt the herd. Go away. And they left. Back to sheep. Doing sheep things. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Fenced in doing sheep things. It wasn't long before I was watching the sheep all over again, like watching chickpeas dry. So ho hummus. And I got bored again, and I howled, "Wolf!" again, and it felt like I was harmonizing with the moon. I laughed as they arrived, and it was a man's laughter from a boy fenced in a field of sheep. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. Don't disrupt the herd, or they'll turn your backs on you. The old scold and leave stale bit. Back to ho hummus. Disrespect the herd. Fenced in and nothing's happening. Sheep doing sheep things. Nothing's happening. Standing in chickpea field and nothing's happening. And I howl again in hopes of perfecting my midnight moon song. This time there's no men. No rush. Nothing's happening. I howl my rebellious intent, and no one cared. I howled again. Nothing's happening, and no one cared. I bent down and howled directly at the sheep. I'm tired of doing sheep things. They just keep doing sheep things. Is there nothing beyond the fence? Why don't you care? You're just growing stupid and fat with hair. Gross, 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 and you all need sheared. In my rage, I began to Spartan kick the surrounding fence boards. One by one, I created points of escape. Nothing's happening, figuratively and literally. I pushed the sheep to venture beyond the fence. Nothing's happening. They're just standing there, doing sheep things. And nothing's happening. You know who we haven't heard from in a bit? The Quarantines! What a hoot and a holler! Oh, my! Ill-fated. You replied to an ad that stated cabin for rent on secluded lake. It was a ruse that I created. I have a very specific plan. You're in the palm of my hand, debating your safety and waiting for a murder that's already planned. It's premeditated. And this is not some spur-of-the-moment murder in a violent rage. It's the result of silent, perfect planning happening for days. Call me a maniac, but I've got a million ways to lure you into the woods and stick you good and seal your fate. Nobody sees like me in the dark, and nobody sees me in the dark. And before your eyes have time to adjust, there's a machete in your heart, and your insides are on the outside, and your intestines are climbing down your legs entwined like vines. And as your life flashes before your eyes, the last thing you see are my eyes, all the way up until the time that life flashes before that life's eyes, and the last thing those eyes see are my eyes looking back at me, flashing before my eyes. It's over in a flash before my eyes. It's over. I pull out my knife and wipe the blood off on your tie while I try not to get any blood on mine. I fail. I blame that on you. I stab you again, but this time put the blade clear through, which only makes it worse. But what am I supposed to do when you're a crazy maniac? The options are few. Find a towel and wipe the blood directly off your suit, adjust your tie, sheath your knife, and just go back to doing you. Lurking and stalking and barking in the dark, listening for whispers of ghosts disguised as art, dismissing all the visions of a love that fell apart and reminiscing on the times before I had this broken heart. You came to the woods for a peaceful vacation? No such luck. We're in the dark waiting. Our knives are sharp and debilitating, and it's a perfect night for murder. She sings the night alive while I cut out your insides. She's the reason I can clearly see your intestines. Assume the stabbing murder stance, melodic demonic death dance, like you're the reason for my lost romance, and when I cut off your legs you won't stand a chance. The blood sprays in crimson ribbons all across my face and all over the kitchen. Who's gonna clean up this mess? Listen, if you don't clean this place up, I'm gonna kill you again with a weapon that's so much more bloody and gory. No more PG rating, because we flooded the story back in Act 1 when we gutted Corey with a machete to the belly, so I'm sorry, not sorry. Our love is a perfect love. Not even death can keep us apart. Her hand guides the knife as we turn murder into art, flame to fire to inferno, and she's as crazy as I am. How can I let her go when she's the reason I am? And when she died in the wreck that day, I became Dr. Volcano in this world, my Pompeii. So come and try your luck at a romantic getaway, but know that you'll stay here forever. We just hope you enjoy your stay. Mookie was a Himalayan chocolate point. Now that's a cat for the uninitiated. Fluffy little bugger. Looked like a Mogwai or a small Ewok. He had those big bulgy eyes, the pushed-in snout, and the coloring that could have been hand-painted on. He was my buddy. I'd make the string dance for him for hours, and he would chase Lego cars, and we'd knock things over that we weren't supposed to. We had dog fun, even though he was a cat. Mookie had a tether line, and we could take our escapades outside. Under blue skies, we chased each other around a pristine golf green lawn. Kept that way by fertilizer, which Mookie ate. Mookie convulsed for 45 minutes, and then Mookie died, frothing at the mouth and bleeding from the snout, and all I could do was cry. Until this day, I'm still haunted by that lesson about death, about poison, about being haunted, about how not all ghosts wear sheets. Some are fluffy little buggers with bulgy eyes and pushed-in noses. It's a razor blade dancing on the edge of the abyss. This is a copper cascading crimson drips down red lips. This is a strange hysteria fueled by video games and the media. It's deranged. I'm scared of you. What the hell are you doing here? You're the crazy ones. You think that this is fun for us? You just show up from the light, invade our space, then run from us? What kind of game is this? And how insane is this that every October is the same as this? These freaks just show up and make themselves at home like this, lining up in my living room, reluctant to give any room to a clown just trying to navigate the line there's no way of getting through? I hope you're happy. Our patterns are all out of whack, and we're very superstitious creatures of habit, and you march in here making all this racket, well, then we're likely to just stab you and have at it. Grab you. Act savage. I've had it. I can't fathom how, after 10 long years, this place is even still standing. Underneath the dirt, but just above the bones, the in-between space between the ground and your new home, the 6 feet of soil that keeps you locked inside, the sickening white of your face as you realize you won't survive, the unheard screams buried underground, lost to the ether when no one hears a sound, the scratch marks on the coffin lid that no one will ever see, the evidence you tried your best and fought death valiantly, but the weight is just too much. On top of a coffin made of oak, the air is running out your shot at life, up in smoke, the claustrophobia setting in as you slowly start to choke, the suffocation suffering knowing there's no hope. In the unexplored shadows and oft-ignored corners, abandoned basements, attics, closets, and other homes of horror, we stretch through the black and we whisper in the darkness. We reach inside your mind to find the ultimate catharsis, to leave you screaming and wondering where exactly your heart is, the terror-teeming, thundering dreaming of your carcass, half-eaten and seemingly bereft of human form, badly beaten beyond reasoning and left to fertilize the corn. And there's no happy ever after, but there's tragedy galore. There's no cheering and no laughter. There is only gore. And when your broken body can't take it anymore, that's when this unspoken hobby gets real hardcore. See, we'll string up the corpse and let it dangle from the eaves like a dead human puppet show to alleviate the grief. And it won't just be you. No, we'll also kill your friends. We'll string them up too and make them kill you again in a vicious reenactment, all hosted by me. Dr. Volcano presents Your Murder. And it will not be PG. Bird with busted wing. You used to soar. Now you walk around the industrial part of St. Catherine's. Broken bird, not the figurative kind. Hopping around a dusty parking lot, frantic, panicked. Eyes that brim with urgency. I can't help you, little friend. I don't have what it takes. A mercy stomp. Boot heel on skull, quick release. I just mouth a soundless apology at the sky you used to know. And walk away, across the gravel, our feet now share. As the hayride sputtered and abruptly died, the patrons muttered, "Are you serious? There were people cluttered inside the ride, and when it died, they stuttered, "I'm furious." They all stepped off and scattered as the wagon exploded in flames, pedestrians lost in the darkness, gone forever, as if they'd never came. A few doors down from me, on the Crescent where I live, was the house of a lady who kind of died, but never really did. She was always alone because no one ever really cared to acknowledge the poor lady who had simply just been there. She took the neighborhood's indifference, fashioned it into a noose, and then with a head full of sad, she climbed a ladder to the moon. And if she could see the neighborhood today, I truly have no doubt that she would smile at least one good time, knowing now she's all we talk about. Sometimes poetry reads like suicide notes and vice versa. Not in that suicide notes are poetry, but in a way that the poetry becomes the opposite of a suicide note. And I want to write those poems. Poems that redefine worth. Mine, yours. Poems that extinguish the suffering stanzas on the pages of people trying their best to tread apathetic waters. I'm practicing perseverance. I'm getting pretty good at it. I wasn't always the strongest swimmer. See, early waters were cold and deep and dark and rough, and poetry, you life preserver like writing, cradled the back of my neck, styrofoam stuffed in polyvinyl nylon. It's not built for comfort, just to get you safely home. And when you get home, you're still a bit messed up from the water, but you can splash, and you can dunk your head. And if you dunk your head, you can tread. And if you can tread, you can swim, so swim! See, sometimes poetry reads like suicide notes. And vice versa. Not in that suicide notes are poetry, but in a way that poetry becomes the opposite of a suicide note. And I want to write those kind of poems. When death bends the knee, one typically pays attention, listens carefully, and holds all questions. When death bends the knee, in all his dapper blackness underneath the moon and stars and atmospheres of madness, when death bends the knee and hums the nocturne in his heart and the tendrils of the night reach to you through the dark, when death bends the knee, and all the light is gone, when sadness is all that's left and you try to soldier on and shoulder the load of a boulder on each arm with death on bended knee before you in the dark, whispering to you that all you knew could quickly fall apart, or you could live in black forever and love like perfect art. When death bends the knee, no one will know anymore if it's you they really see or simply a shadow of the you used to be. In front of the outstretched hand of the black infinity, you're scared. And that's to be expected when death bends the knee. Don't take this proposal lightly. You've earned the sun rightly, days to waste away in delightful dreams nightly. When death bends the knee, you can look the other way. You don't even have to listen to the things he has to say. You can just walk, find your spark, and come towards the light. And leave him weeping in the dark. There's no demon in the sun that we can't overcome, so turn your back to this proposal. All you have to do is run. But when death bends the knee, he seems to sprout a silver tongue, and when you think the battle's done, it's only really just begun. So when death bends the knee, you can choose to pay attention and just always be true. And when death bends the knee, please don't ever say I do. Yes, hello, is this Jumbo Video? It's not. Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, is this Rogers Video? Hello, is this Blockbuster? Really? Well, where the hell do people rent their films? Well, this makes no sense at all. People watch what? Yes, hello, is this YouTube? Ah, fantastic. And let me get this straight. You just let whoever make a film and then post it up on the internet? Oh, you do? All I need is an account? Well, that's fantastic.